Welcome back to the Outward Expression. I'm your host, Roman, and I'm very happy and pleased to present once again David Vogel, Screen Actors Guild
Actor.
actor. And what we're doing today is we're taking up from where we left off on the last interview. And if you recall, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you recall that we were speaking about David's uh, path into the acting world and some of the more uh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Obstacles, maybe?
Obstacles with regard to joining the Screen Actors Guild, things along that nature. And when we were last together, I think we were like somewhere in the 1990s. If you'd like to take it up from there.
Sure. So, 1990s. I'm married and about to become, well, no. So if we're starting at 1990, I'm I'm out of high school and I've certainly chosen this career path. I've found this passion and pretty much told myself that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, every day for the rest of my life, and working to make that happen. Um, and living in Chicago, that's kind of a hard. It's 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 a hard city to make that happen. And I mean, the business itself is incredibly difficult to penetrate into, but doing it in a city other than New York or LA makes it that much more difficult. Um, but I was cutting my teeth. Um, I started taking classes at the Improv Olympic and Players Workshop, Second City, and trying to find my way, uh, meet people, network, understand the process of getting jobs and what those stepping stones are. And back in the day, it's completely different today. But back in the day, it was a simple set of rules, right? You took some classes, you began to establish a resume of training at reputable venues, reputable institutions, um, and you got a headshot, and basically just started submitting that headshot with a resume stapled to the back of it with your training in hopes that um, there's a job out there that is looking for your look, and the people on the side of the table making the decisions see something, anything, a look, uh, they like your name, whatever it is that would trigger them to pick up the phone and call you in for an audition. So that's what I spent the very first part of the 90s doing, was just learning that process. And at the time there weren't a lot of there's no there's no college course. There's no, I mean, other than books in the library, basically, you're on the ground, pounding the pavement, asking people, talking to people, just going out there making a complete fool of yourselves, asking anybody who will listen to you questions that you're, trying to get any answers from. And over the time, you begin to piece together enough information and enough experience to where you begin to learn how the game is played. And it's a game, make no mistake. So by 92, I had landed at John Casablancas Modeling Career Center. I was instructing would-be runway models, and I was teaching some on camera classes at a very ripe young age of 21. And inside the Casablancas uh, acting and modeling career centers, they actually had their own little boutique agency called MTM Management, Model and Talent Management Agency. And by getting a job at Casablancas, I was able to get representation from that agency. And it was with that agency that I actually booked my first commercial for Famous Footwear, shooting commercials wearing gym shoes, and you really didn't see my face, you saw my feet. But it was it was a great experience in learning the behind the scenes construct of the business. You know what a call time is, what you know what a location means. You know all of those, all the lingo basically of the industry. And from there, in the middle of that, I I bumped into my now wife, who was a woman that I went to high school with, and we reconnected and fell in love and got married and started a family. And when that happened, there was a dramatic shift in priorities, of course, right? Um, I married this woman who uh, didn't really come from that background. She wasn't an actress or wasn't, you know, very familiar with the theater scene or anything like that. So, in the beginning of that part of my life, it was a bit of a struggle in the sense of trying to kind of relearn myself. You know, I have this driving driving passion of wanting to be a full-time working actor, and now I'm married and planning a family and trying to figure out, and doing this all in Chicago, trying to figure out how I was going to make that work and and still keep balance in in life. And it was it was hard.
I think that's kind of the point where we started off. This interview was kind of launched with the idea that what you were going to impart to the audience was how you managed to make that work. And I think we're kind of at a crossroads here where you're going to actually maybe flesh that out a little bit for
Sure,
us. So,
absolutely. And it really boiled down to having a very strong grasp of my priorities, both personal priorities for my dreams, but also the priorities in terms of how they relate to my obligations. And it can be done. It can be done, right? Um, as long as you, I'm going to use the word balance a lot because it really falls on that. There were moments where I had to sacrifice the audition. I couldn't go to the audition because I had the obligation of being a parent, right? Taking care of my daughter or my son or whatever things that they had going on in their life, whether it was a parent teacher conference or some sort of a recital, or even just sitting at the dining room table, helping them with their homework. Um, but the flip side to that was, when those auditions came that were really important, really big, had a tremendous amount of opportunity. Well, then there was, the negotiation that came into play, and compromise, and striking those balances with my wife and the kids, and saying, hey, look, is there something that we can do where, I can still be a part of this, but I can still make this audition. And it worked, I guess, for in the simplest sense, it worked. There were a lot of auditions that I missed, but there were also a lot of auditions that I made. And you know, it's a it's an additional struggle on the personal priority side of things, because when you do get these auditions, there's no there's no flexibility on the auditioner's side. They call you up and they say, look, we want to see you for this role um, at 1:10 tomorrow afternoon. Can you be there? Yes or no? You either say yes or you say no. And if you say no, they go on to the next person. So if you say yes, you had better be there at 1:10 and ready to go, because everything in any business revolves around time and money. And if you make a commitment to these people, using their time and their money, you certainly don't want to make an impression that compromises that. There's no room to be in damage control for your
Hmm.
reputation.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to just make an observation. It seems to me like in this particular industry, there is a power balance that is there is the power here, and then it seems like the scales are tipped in the favor of the people who are doing the auditions, and that's obvious. But what it seems to me like that it's almost as if they are depending upon the desire of the aspiring actor or you know uh, client to just move heaven and earth to do their bidding. Would that be fair to say that?
It is fair to say, but um, the 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 additional weight on that aspiring actor is that the auditioner, the director, the producer of the project, of the job, whether it's a commercial or a theatrical production or a film, a document, whatever the project is, they know that there are 15 people deep that resemble the same look and features that you have. So if it's not you, there's going to be a litany of other people for them to choose from. So the, the cards are
They're holding all the cards.
undoubtedly
Yeah,
stacked against the artist.
yeah.
You know, if this puts anything into perspective, going back to the early days when I was working at Casablancas and their model talent management agency, they had 8 4-drawer filing cabinets from labeled from basically A to Z, and that was the alphabetical order of all of the actors' headshots. And when I say every single drawer was, you couldn't fit any more headshots in any one of these drawers from A to Z of just pictures of people who wanted to be actors, actresses, or models. And this is one agency in one smaller minor market of Chicago. So just take that and blow it up towards, at the time in Chicago, late 90s, there was probably 30 talent agencies in the city at that time. It's been drastically reduced and consolidated to probably about half a dozen or so. But imagine 30 agencies with a similar situation, 8 file cabinets, all drawers, packed from A to Z with just pictures of people. And that's just Chicago. Now you've got every other major market across the country. So it is, to say that it is a competitive industry, it's just, it's, it's,
It almost seems to me like, and I
it's like winning the lottery.
yeah, I was going to say it. I would hesitate to say that I doubt that the dynamic in terms of the desire on the part of the actor and the people who hold the reins of the studios and so forth has changed in any meaningful way. I think it's probably still the same. It's just that it's been um, maybe mechanized, for lack of a better word, or digitized to the point where we don't have file cabinets anymore, but
So
we have files.
it's a great observation. The cards have actually stacked, have been stacked even harder towards the artist, because um, a typical scenario is, um, a talent agent walks into their office and they get a set of breakdowns. A breakdown is a list of all of the jobs that are coming into the city, um, uh, for a variety of different um, media, whether it's a print job, a commercial, or whatnot. And the breakdown is a breakdown, literally, of the job and the talent that is needed for that. And then that talent agent goes back to those file cabinets and they pull all of the actors or actresses or models that they represent that fit the description of the needed talent for that specific job. That gets rushed off to the casting agent in an envelope with all the headshots. This is back in the day. Casting agent gets that envelope. They throw out all the headshots onto the table, and they basically start looking through all. And they say, okay, we want to see her, we want to see her, we want to see her, him. All right, those out of the 300 headshots that were submitted, we want to see these 15 people. Those 15 people, those calls go back to the talent agent. Hey, call your talent. We want to see these 15 people. Next thing you know, that artist, model, actor is getting a phone call from their agent saying, hey, we got an audition for you tomorrow at 3 o'clock at David O'Connor or at Claire Simon, or maybe it's at the actual photographer who landed the shoot for whatever it is. If it's a catalog piece, a print piece, whatever. And it's that's it. That's your moment. Hey, Ray, I have an audition for you tomorrow at 3 o'clock at David O'Connor. Can you make it? It's there's no. Can I call you back in 15? Let me check with my wife. There's you either say yes or no. And if you say yes, you had better be there. Because again, it falls back to the reputation. You make a commitment, you're there. Because if you waste the talent agent's time, right? The talent agent is sending you to the casting agent. That casting agent is expecting you to be there at 3 o'clock. You said you're going to be there. You don't show up. Not only have you wasted the casting agent's time, but now you just made a major blemish or a black eye on your talent agent. You've got one, maybe two of those, in your pocket. Those, call them screw ups in your pocket, depending on how beautiful you are or depending on how talented you are. After that, you're done. One of the sayings that I created early on that I hold true to this day, and I try and share with as many young people as I can, and that is, and it takes a little bit of running it through your head a couple of times to understand what I'm getting at, but anybody, speaking of the entertainment industry, anybody who is somebody knows everybody. So if you're in front of that anybody who is somebody, a producer, a director, right? And that person has clout, that person has connections, right? They know all of the people who have the connections. They know all of the people who have clout. You get in front of that person and you piss them off, excuse my language, or you make a fool of yourself, or you embarrass your talent agency, you're done. You're done. You it will take a second coming to repair your reputation to get you back into those people again. So I don't know if I'm kind of going off
No, no.
on,
I
on, a,
mean,
on a
this is
tangent.
really interesting to me because it seems to me like that you're describing an industry in which there's, you know,
Very little room for error.
yes, not only very little room for error, but a enormous amount of maybe unrealized dreams and just
Oh my,
crushed spirits.
absolutely
This is very impromptu, but it occurs to me that those file cabinets are just littered with broken hearts, it would seem.
profound.
Thank you.
Yes, you need to go into this with the idea that um, there are no promises. There's only hopes, and you should really be doing this for the right reasons. Because if you're not, it can be very damaging. It can be damaging to your soul. It can be damaging to your just whatever adjective I guess you
Well,
want
soul's a good place to
you
start,
you
I
want
think,
to
with
throw
that, Dave.
into it. I I found this at a very early age. I found it in junior high. It manifested into high school. And I basically told myself at a very early age, I made a promise to myself that I was going to give a little bit of myself to this dream every day. And the amount of effort is going to, be more and less on any given day, but I'm going to do a little bit every day because I don't want to end up on my deathbed and look back at my life and say, what if? And I have. I can say pretty confidently that I've I've read a little, I've emailed a little, I've uh, connected with people a little bit every day, for the most part, in pursuit of the day where I'm able to make a living doing this. And I'm not talking about the grandiose, A-list actor, Tom Cruise, that kind of stardom. Because let's be honest, that's less than half of 1% of the people out there. And there are significant sacrifices and compromises that people of that caliber that have to make, right? I mean, they don't live, yeah, it might seem all glamorous and such, and they've got all the money in the world, but there's no place on the corner of the planet that they can go that they're not recognized. And that is a drastic infringement on freedom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You
It
know,
seems to me like when I see these aging actors or, rock stars and so forth, they always seem to be um, doing, if they're performing, it seems perfunctory, as if they are obliged to do it. It is no longer when they're in their later years. It's
yeah,
seems, it's just the impression I get
right. They're
that it's no
always on
longer,
stage or they're always on camera.
and it's no longer a joy for them, but it's an obligation, a perfunctory.
Yeah,
Um,
and I really never wanted. I never really, there was a side of me that never really wanted to get to that point. You
if
know.
you would say that there was an actor who had seemed to navigate this labyrinth with the most success, who would come to mind? Who would, if you would say this actor not only brought to the screen his craft and maintained the integrity, his own integrity and his soul, can you think of a person who might fit that profile in your estimation?
Wow.
I'm throwing this out there just as this is a curveball for David.
Yeah, there's not one particular. There's probably a decent handful of actors that I've
Who
always.
comes to mind?
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman. Okay, yeah.
Um,
Um,
you know,
Unforgiven comes to mind.
Denzel Washington.
Okay,
Big,
another.
a big fan of Denzel's work. Um, I I I I truly look for inspiration in the artist who can truly remove their own personal
Ego.
no, their own personal mannerisms, their own personal tics. They have the ability to truly,
Set all that aside.
set all that aside and really pour themselves into this character and give this character their own set of speech patterns, ways that they, look at and glance and tie all of that into the words and the emotion and be living in the moment and making it completely real. And there are very few actors that have that ability. Everybody can talk about the greats, right? Pacino, De Niro, you know, and the argument can be made that there are a lot of films where you just see De Niro being De Niro, Pacino being Pacino. But, you know, when you look closely at a Daniel Day-Lewis film and and compare the difference in roles that he took and the way he portrays these characters, there's Daniel Day-Lewis is Denzel Washington, um, just yeah. I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, and it sparks another question. And before, I mean, we're going to be wrapping this up in a little bit here, but I wonder myself as I contemplate what you were saying about those file cabinets just crammed with people, and like I said earlier, unrealized dreams. I imagine too in the confluence of all of that, there was a lot of unrealized talent that,
Undoubtedly,
yeah. So
undoubtedly, I I know dozens of brilliant, and I mean just brilliant people, and I know them
just
personally.
passed
I've
over.
shared I've shared stages with them. I've been on sets with them, who mustered up the guts, the courage, the money, and made the trek out to LA with the dream that they were going to walk into, you know, the agency,
MGM
yeah, whatever,
theater
whatever, you know,
studio.
agency, and wow them, and and be the next cast of Friends, or and they came back 2 years later broke, depressed, and disgusted with the industry, and completely walked away from it. And this is where I sort of can tie this whole story into my vision. And one of the reasons why I made the choice not to take my family out to New York or to LA was because I love to do this so much that even if I never got to Hollywood or got to Broadway, there was still enough work and enough enough quality places in the city of Chicago where I could still finagle my way in and get myself on stage or get myself in front of a camera and still have fun doing what I love to do, and still every day pursuing that dream. And I can I can sit here today and tell you that I've shot over a dozen commercials, some national. I've been on the set of all the major Chicago shows. I've met some pretty famous people, and I've had a lot of fun doing it, and I've still been able to maintain my marriage of 34 years and raise my two incredibly beautiful, gifted children. And and I'm 56 years young, and I'm still pursuing it. So there's a lot of life left in me. So
So this is the point at which where I'm going to ask David the permission to just kind of put a bow on all of this. And if you'll grant me that, I would say
so
that
granted.
um, what we're talking about here is an industry in which people have dreams and aspirations that may be beyond realistic. And David seems to have threaded a particularly narrow needle in which he has been able to, from my observation, satisfied that desire to be a professional in the industry and yet maintain his integrity, maintain a household and raise children, and that's the value that he placed on that. So Dave's chips were all in, but they weren't all in on one number. David, uh, basically, I think you chose a wise path to realize that this dream comes with it a cost.
Absolutely.
And you seem to have done something I imagine very few people could do. Is you seem uh, settled with the choices you've made, very pleased with them.
Yeah, I am.
On balance, yeah,
Absolutely. The days behind us are behind us.
yeah,
You're never going to get them back. There's only the days that you have in front of you, and the older you get, the less days that you have. So, I've driven nice cars. I've been able to go to Europe. I've
meet interesting people.
be fascinating
Yeah,
people. I've been able to drive, nice cars, all the while still pursuing my dream. The dream never dies if you're always, I guess this kind of ties into one final saying, and that is, you only fail when you stop trying. So
excellent,
so never
excellent
so
point.
never never stop trying.
And so, what sets you apart from the people who went out to Hollywood and came back, from what I ascertained, as broken men or women, and but you've maintained peace with the balance that you've chosen, and I think that's remarkable. I think um, there's nothing to be ashamed of with what these people went through, but I think the wisdom you demonstrated in that balance is kind of what I wanted to impart to the audience, and I think you've done a masterful job of doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, is there, in closing, if you were to be speaking to, you had a young man or woman sitting in front of you who had these same dreams, what message would you impart to them? Um,
Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. If you're doing it for glam and for glory and for money, you're into it. You're into it for the wrong reasons. Um, I can only talk to this from the actor's perspective. I didn't really do much modeling, so I don't know much about that arena. But from the actor's perspective, you're a storyteller, right? We're storytellers. Just go into the project to tell the story as best as you possibly can, and if the echelon of that takes you to much bigger and brighter and global stories where the fame and the fortune come with it, well then so be it. But um, yeah, one job at a time. Pour yourself into it if the job comes, because you're fighting other people for it. But at
and
the end,
maybe don't quit your day job.
don't quit your day job. Don't quit your day job. If there's a will, if there is a will, there is most definitely a way.
Excellent. Well, with that, I really want to thank you for joining us today. This is David Vogel. I am Roman, your host. This has been the Outward Expression. Choose the good.
Cheers.
All right. I think that went pretty
I
well.
do too.
I really like the way we finished that up. I sure hope we got that on. I sure hope we got all of that.